Hello, everyone, and welcome to our today's webinar, which is going to be all about automating document centric processes. My name is Rizita, and I'm a product marketing manager at Zenphi, and I'll be hosting this event. My colleague Danica from the success team was supposed to host this webinar, but unfortunately, she couldn't make it, so I'm replacing her. We have some really great content for you today, and I'm really excited to share it with you all. But before we begin, I just wanted to highlight a few important moments. The first thing, the webinar will be recorded. So you'll receive the recording within 1 or 2 business days after the webinar. So keep an eye on your inbox. The second thing, all attendees will be muted. So if you have questions, please feel free to post them in the Q&A box in the bottom of your screen. And someone from the Zenf team will answer you. And the last thing, there will be a survey at the end of the webinar, and we'd love it if you would take part in it. As a thank you, you'll receive the presentation of today's webinar and the tutorial with all the automation scenarios that I'm going to be showing you today. Thank you so much for joining, and let's get started. Let me quickly switch to the slides. Okay, so let's quickly look through our today's agenda. First of all, we'll learn what is document lifecycle, how to automate it, and most importantly, why it needs automation. Then we'll see how different organizations around the world are dealing with document processing challenges and problems. Then we'll find out what employees really hate about documents. And then I'm going to walk you through a few automation scenarios. The first one is going to be how to extract data from the document and put it into another system. That's a super basic process. We face it a lot in our operations, but it still requires much of manual work and much of our precious time. The same goes for the next automation scenario that I'm going to be showing you, which is how to generate a new document and e-sign it automatically. And of course, we'll have time for your questions at the end of the webinar. Okay, so let's start with document lifecycle. So even in the era of digitization and all the modern tools we use every day, we still have to deal with documents a lot. Documents aren't going anywhere. We still need to process those PDFs, Google Docs. We need to approve them, sign them, generate them, you name it. But most of the time, each document goes through the same life cycle in most organizations. So let's look at each stage of the cycle more closely. So usually, to generate a document, you have to take the data from database like CRM, sales base, whatever you use it, Google Sheet, then put this data into a document. Then once the document is generated, we need to send it, usually via email, or we just need to upload it to Google Drive. And sometimes we need to approve those documents. Sometimes it can be multiple parties involved in the approval process. Sometimes we even need to sign those documents. And once the document is ready, we need to store it somewhere and it should be a correct place. We need to make sure that this document is accessible to the right people in your organization. We need to make sure it won't get lost anywhere. And also, most of the time, um, at some stage, we need to take the data from the document and put it back into our database, back to our CRMs. So, looking at this cycle, you can imagine that each stage, there's a lot of manual work required. It's super time consuming, inefficient, and can cause errors within each step. So documents may be stored in the wrong place. The document may be lost in the approvals chain, especially if there are multiple parties involved in this. And there can be a small error, like the wrong number, but that can cost a lot to your organization. So yeah, that's exactly why you need document automation. Okay, now let's look at how organizations are actually dealing with those document management challenges. So, according to Gartner research, employees waste from 20 to 30% of their work week managing documents. So you can imagine that's a lot of time. And even though we spend so much time on it, 97% of organizations have minimal document processes according to Adobe research. So, of course, that's causing some real problems for employees. So, for example, 54% of US office professionals report wasting time searching for much needed files, and 83% of employees recreate missing documents. So, as you can see, without comprehensive and streamlined document processes, organizations lose critical time. Now, if we translate those percentages into real working hours, that's what we'll see. So, imagine a typical working day of a US knowledge worker from small and medium businesses. So, according to Zapier research, they would spend from 1 to 3 hours on fixing errors, simply moving data from one place to another, and just trying to find information or a particular document. And yeah, actually, I can really relate to those stats because before automation, I can imagine spending lots and lots of time doing those things every day. Okay, I promise I'll be done showing the research stats soon. But I just think it's so important to see the document management problems from this perspective as we get used to doing some operational things the same way over and over again. And sometimes we just forget that we actually waste so much time on them, and that we actually could use that time on a much more meaningful work. So I just wanted to show you last two researchers. They're really great, and the first one was done by Smartsheet, and they asked employees what are the productivity killers that you would like to automate, and turned out it's data collection, approvals, and updates. And another research by Automation Anywhere, actually, it showed almost the same thing. So, the most unlike manual office tasks for employees are data entry, email managing, filling documents, generating reports, and managing invoices. So, the good news here is that really all of those heated manual tasks can be automated, and they can be automated really easily. And soon I'm going to show you how to do that. But before we dive into that, I just wanted to briefly talk about document automation benefits. So, by far, we were talking about the automation only from an employee point of view. But of course, the more productive and satisfied your employees are, the more satisfied would be your clients, suppliers, partners, whoever you work with. All of them will see the effect in faster resolution times, and overall, your organization can be a lot more efficient. Um, Other than that, automation plays a huge role in your organization's security. With inefficient manual processes, it's so easy to store the documents with sensitive information in the wrong place or send it to the wrong people. And they'll have access to this data, and you won't be able to do anything about that. And of course, the main benefit here is you will save hours of work every week on a really meaningful work. So now, when we are ready to automate our document management, we need to find a right solution. Of course, you can hire developers, but as you know, they're super expensive. And if you have your IT team in the organization, it's inefficient to use the existing IT resources. And if you've tried to find the right automation solution, you're probably familiar with some of the platforms out there. Um, some of them are too expensive, and you cannot see the return of investment, or they're affordable but they solve only one small problem, so you end up having multiple tools anyway and spend more time educating employees. You spend more money on subscriptions, and all of those platforms, they're not really connected to your existing ecosystem, so your data is still all over the place. So, looking at those existing automation solutions, we came to understanding that there should be a better one, and that's why we've created Zenphi. So, Zenphi is the only no-code automation software built specifically for Google Workspace products like Gmail, Google Drive, Google Sheets, Google Forms, and more. So, finally, let's go and see it in action. And let's automate our first scenario, which is extracting data from the document and put it into another system. So let's say you have received an invoice by email, or it was uploaded to your Google Drive folder, and you need to take the information out of the document. So, for example, invoice number, invoice amount, etc., and put it into Google Sheet. Okay, so right now we are inside Zenfi account, and our first step would be to set up AI model to teach Zenfi how to extract data from the document that we need. So as you can see, Zenfi can extract data from many different types of documents. So it can be form or receipt or utility bill, or actually any document you have with any structure. We can set up Zenphi so it can extract data from this document, and then we can use this data further in our automated process. So for this demonstration, we'll take the invoice because it's super basic document, and I'm sure everyone is familiar with it. So yeah, let me show you the invoice parser that I've already created. So it's super easy to create this AI model. What we need to do is just upload our invoice here to add new files button. Um, and then from the right side, Zenfi will suggest some common invoice properties that we can use as the output of this AI model. So it means that all of this data we can use further in our process. We can send it by email, we can store it in Google Sheet, and do whatever we want with this data. So as you can see, Zenfi suggests invoice ID. And if we take a look at the document, we see that it's the correct invoice ID that was read by Zenfi. Um, if we need this data, uh, so if this data is what we need, we just click on tick, and then we'll see this output data here in the selected fields. So for this document, I've selected 7 fields that I want to use further in my process. It's invoice ID, total amount, supplier name, receiver address, etc. So once this AI model is ready, I'm going to click on Save and Publish, and it's done. Now to launch the process where the data from the invoice will be automatically transferred to Google Sheet, we need to go to Zenphi flows. So here we go. Um, to create a new flow, you will just click on that, but we will go and see how the already built flow is created. So let's open that. Let's click on the flow designer. That's where we actually automate everything. And as you can see, the process of automation is super simple. It's just dragging and dropping. So each process in Zenphi consists of a trigger and multiple actions, as many actions as you need. So the trigger can be email arrival, it can be Google Drive file upload. Um, so your flow can be launched by schedule. For this example, we will use Google Drive folder upload. So it means every time the file is uploaded to Google Drive, this file will be processed through a model. So that's our next action. Uh, and the data from this AI model will be transferred to Google Sheet. So how we set up the trigger? First of all, we need to set up the connection. As you can see, I've already done that. It's super simple. You just click on plus, connect to your Google Drive account, give permission to Zenphi to read the files in your Google Drive, and you are choosing the folder that you want to track. And it's done. Then we add AI model action. So that's the AI model that we have just created, and we're just choosing that from the dropdown. Um, and in this field, we need to tell Zenphi what document we want to process through this AI model. And that's where we will need a token picker. So a token picker in Zenphi um, allows you to use the data from the trigger and previous actions inside another action. So if I want to take that file from a Google Drive folder, I'll just click on Token Picker, and a smart suggestion from Zenphi will show me file content. So it means that the file that was uploaded to Google Drive will then be processed into this action with AI model. And the last action that we add here would be add data to Google Sheet. So setting up this action is a pretty straightforward process as well. What we need to do is just create a connection with our Google Sheet, then choose the sheet that we want to put our data to. So it's going to be the file name and the sheet name. Let me actually show you how this Google Sheet will look like. So as you can see, it's super simple. We just have 4 columns with the information from the invoice that we want to store. And once we click on the load columns, Zenphi will automatically transfer all the columns that you have in this Google Sheet here. And then we just need to add the values from the AI model to the appropriate columns. So we will do that using the same token picker that we used before. So as you can see, we have the action, extract data from the dog. That's what we need. We click on the drop down. And we see that this action will transfer all of these output values. And we just click on the plus, and that's how we set up the transferring within the Google Sheet. Okay, so let's go and test this flow. We just click on test, select a file to start. So inside my Google folder, I already have an invoice. Let me show you how it looks like. So it's a super simple invoice. And you already saw that in our AI model. So we click on that. And from the left side, we see how this flow is processed. And yeah, we see that it's completed very quickly. We see that Zenphi looked through the trigger. It's extracting the data from our invoice and put this data into Google Sheet. So let's close the test mode and see if we have the data from the invoice in the Google Sheet. Yeah, and we have it. Yeah, let's check. So we have an invoice from Olivia Wilson and we have the invoice number. And as we can see, everything is correct. So within within really 2 minutes, we automated this manual and time-consuming task. So now let's automate our second scenario. It's a similar one, but a more complex. So right now we want to automatically extract data from the invoice. Um, then we want to ask for approval of our manager before processing this invoice. Then we want to store the information from the invoice in the table. And then we want to automatically generate report about how many invoices were processed, how many invoices were approved. So basically, we want to have a dashboard with all the input metrics that will help us to optimize our process. So we are back in the Zenphi account. And let's look at our um, more complex flow. So as you can see, it starts from the same file upload to Google Drive trigger. So we don't change anything in that part. Then we add the same action of running an AI model here. Again, no changes. But now, instead of Google Sheets, we want to use another database, which is Zenphi table. So let's look at it. So that's how Zenphi table looks like. It works very similarly to Google Sheet, but with Zenphi table, you can store all the information from your processes in one place, so you don't have to move between the apps. You don't have to create thousands of sheets and get lost into them. So using the same logic we had when we move the data from the invoice to Google Sheet, we just go back to Zenphi Flow and add the action that will help us add a new record to table each time the invoice is uploaded. And again, the setup process is super easy. Here in the table field, we choose the Zenphi table from the drop down menu. And then using the same token picker that we are already familiar with, we um, fill in we fill in the data from the AI action. Then with the if condition action, we want to assign a task to our manager for approve this invoice if the currency of the invoice is AUD, or actually let it be USD. So how we can do that, we just click on our gear icon, and in the condition field, we set up our condition like that. When the currency, and we take this data again from our AI model, equal to USD. And we click in on OK, and that's it. So if the currency is USD, it'll go to our manager. And for that, we will add assign a task action. So assign a task action is a very convenient way to send tasks to your teammate or even to someone outside your organization. Um, the process of setting this task up is pretty straightforward. So we need to fill in the task name, task description, the possible outcomes for the assignee to choose from. So this invoice can be approved or it can be rejected. So this task will be sent to our assignee by email that we will indicate over there. And with the token pickers, we can also indicate some of the invoice data right away in our email subject and in our email body. So if a manager clicks on approved, then we're gonna go and update our invoice status in the Zenphi table to approved by a person. Or if it's not approved, we will use the send an email action to notify a team member. Um, and if we go back to the beginning of our flow, if the currency is not USD, then we just approve this invoice automatically, and we want to highlight that in Zenphi table. So we're going to use the same action, and here we'll say that the status will be approved automatically. And optionally, we can also notify our finance team that it's okay and good to go. Okay, now let's save our flow and run a test. So again, we use the same approach as we did with our first scenario. We're choosing a file that is already in the Google Drive. And we see how Flow is executing in real time. So we see that it extracted the data from the dog, then it added a new record to Zenphi table. Okay, so as far as our invoice is in USD currency, then it had to send the task for approval. And right now it's waiting for the outcome of the task. So, so in the assign task action, I've indicated my personal email. And okay, I can see that I have received a task. And that's how it looks like. So it says you have a new task. You can approve or reject it. And I'm gonna click on approve. Okay, so let's go back to Zenphi Flow. So we see that it was approved, and if approved, then the information about our invoice was updated in the Zenphi table. Okay, everything ran successfully. Okay, so let's see how. So inside Zenphi table, we can see that everything filled in correctly. And the status of this invoice is approved by a person. So again, in a matter of minutes, we've automated a more complex process. So the last step would be to automatically generate the report with the dashboards with our important metrics. So for that, we're going to use Zenphi dashboards. And Zenphi dashboards will take the data right from Zenphi table. So that's how your dashboards can look like. So as Zenphi table is a super powerful database, you can create any charts, any you can create any charts, forms, or metrics that you need to optimize your invoice process management. So, for example, here we can see um, how many invoices were received by specific supplier. And also, we want to see how many invoices are in progress right now with this Kanban view. So, whatever you can think of, you can create this dashboard inside Zenphi. Okay, so the last scenario for today would be automatically generate a document from the data in Google Form submission. Then we want to send this document to a manager to sign. Then we will set a password to this doc and send the document back to the requester. Okay, so let's say you have a process where the employee is requesting the employment verification letter, and each time you need to fill in the same data, but it will be individual for each requester. So, to automate this process in Zenphi, you can create a Google form where you ask your employee to fill in the email, full name, and the job title. Then we assume that you have your employee database somewhere, probably in Google Sheet, and then we don't need to ask all of the information we need for this document from the employee. So we just can go to Google Sheet, take the data from there, and put it into the document. So, for example, in this verification letter, we'll also need the start date for this employee, the current date when the document was requested. Um, so, yeah, we'll just take this data from Google Sheet. So, how we can do that? Um, so, our trigger would be this Google form. As you know, the trigger is set up very easily. Again, you just need to uh, connect to your Google account, then click on Load Form Controls, and you'll see all the data that will come with the Google Form submission. Then we will use log current date action to put it into the document into this format. Then we'll use employee name that the employee left in the Google form to look up the record into the Google Sheet. So that's how we can do that. So we will search for the column where we'll have the full name of the employee, and we'll take that data right from the trigger. And those are the values that will be transferred with this action as well. So in the Google Sheet, we have employee full name, start date, and salary, and all of this information will be transferred within this action. Okay, then we will use this action, which is generate document using template, to generate the document with the values from the Google form trigger. So what we are doing here, we just choose the template from our Google Drive. So here we have this document that I showed you before. And as you can see here in the brackets, we have all the dynamic data that will be replaced with the values from our Google form submission. And that's how we are setting this up. So we put these placeholders that we have in the document, and using the token picker, we just put the values from the trigger. So easy as that. And also, we want to generate the PDF from this Google Doc, and then we switch to yes here. Okay, so we're done with this action, and then we want to take this document and send it to our manager to sign. For that, we will use DocuSign action. But if you use any other platforms, for example, Annature eSign or Adobe, you can easily connect it with Zenphi as well. Okay, so let's see how this DocuSign action is set up. So the first field that we need to indicate here will be which document will be sent to the manager to sign. And here we will choose the output of our previous action, which is generated document that was generated from the template, as you remember. Then we will put the message to our recipient, something like sign the requested document. And here we are indicating the fields where we'll need the information from our receiver. Okay, then we want to um, set the password for this document. And for that, we will use set a password action. So for the PDF document, we'll use the um, token from our previous action. So it's the document that is already generated and already signed. And we're switching to password protect and indicating any password we need. And then we want to send this document back to the person who requested that. And we're going to use send email action. So that's a pretty straightforward process here as well. Here we're indicating the password that they need to fill in, and in the attachment, we are gonna send this generated, e-signed, and protected document. Okay, now let's test our flow and click on the test run again. And let's choose select form response to start. Actually, it's gonna work the same way as we would just submit a Google form. So as you can see, the full name will be Bill Murray and job title is an actor. And we'll click on start. Okay, so we see that Zenphi has checked the current date and also found the employee from the Google Sheet. It also generated the document using the Google trigger values. And right now, it sent the document for e-signing. So let's check our inbox if we have any requests. Okay, so we need to review the document. Continue. Okay, so this is our document. As you can see, all the values are already filled in, like the current date and the start date of employee. Um, so what we need to do is just sign it here, and it's going to be done just in a few clicks. Okay, that's a bit unrealistic situation, but let's say that the manager's name is Bill Murray as well. And let's fill that in here. Okay, and the title is gonna be manager, and we're clicking on finish. Perfect. Perfect. the signing is finished, and we go back to Zenphi to see um, what's gonna happen next. Okay, right now it's setting the password to the generated PDF document, and um, it sent the final file by email. Okay, now let's check if we received any emails. Okay, so I can see that the requested employment verification document is ready. I can see that it's protected with the password. And if I click here, and of course, you can share the password using any other channel, but yeah, we do it just for the demonstration of the functions. Clicking on submit. Okay, we see that the document is set and ready. All the information is filled in. We have all the signatures um, in place. So, yeah, we automated our last process for today. So, let's sum up. During today's webinar, we've learned what is the document lifecycle, why no code automation is the answer to efficient document management, and how to use the power of Zenphi to process your documents. Okay, so it's time for your questions. Feel free to post them to the chat, and um, I will answer them. So while you sending the questions, I will answer the ones that I received earlier to the chat. So the first one, do you have any limitations on the number of processes I can automate? Great question, and let me actually show you our Zenphi pricing. So as you can see, we have 5 pricing plans that you can choose from, and each of them will allow you to have a specific amount of flows. So for example, in the free pricing plan, you can automate only one process, and this process can be ran only and this process can be ran 30 times. So, for example, if you want to extract the data from each document that is uploaded to Google Drive, in the free plan, you in the free plan you'll be able to process 30 of such documents. For essentials, we have 10 flows. It means 10 processes. And here we have unlimited flow runs. It means that those 10 processes can um, run as many times as you need. For the Pro plan, we have 20 flows and again, unlimited flow runs. The same for the Pro Plus. And for the enterprise, we can discuss if you need many flows to create. Okay, let me check if we have any other questions in the chat. Okay, so here's a new one. Can Zenphi start a workflow based on other triggers? Great question. And yes, absolutely, you can do that. And let me switch over to Zenphi to show you how you can do that. So, Zenphi can launch a process whenever Google form submitted or email arrived in your inbox or there is a new file uploaded to your Google Drive. Also, you can easily connect a type form and the process will be started each time the type form is submitted. So what else? You can choose on-demand trigger, and each time you just click a button, this flow will be executed whenever you need it. Also, you can use a scheduled trigger. So, for example, if you want to generate a report each week or each month or every 2 weeks, you can easily do that with this trigger. If you want to connect with any other platform you can think of, you can easily use HTTP API trigger. And also, you have options to start your flow from the table action. So, whatever happens in the table action, then the flow will be executed. And also, Zenphi form. So, Zenphi form is a great built-in option to send surveys. So let me check if we have more questions. All right. I can see that we have a few questions coming in the chat, but unfortunately, for this webinar, we already ran out of time. But thank you very much for everybody who joined and sent the questions. We'll contact everybody who didn't receive the answer after the webinar via email. Um, and okay, so I was very happy to host this webinar for you today. So what's next? We'd love it if you can fill in the survey that will appear after you will close the webinar tab. And also, you will receive this survey by email, so no worries if you missed it. After completing the survey, you will receive this presentation along with the tutorials for the scenarios that I showed you during the webinar. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us at this email address, success@zenphi.com. You can easily book a call with me or my colleagues, and we'll help you automate your processes. Okay, so again, thank you very much for joining, and have a great rest of the day. Bye.